They called him the King of Comedy, the man who turned Family Feud into a worldwide obsession, the voice that could fill an arena and the smile that could light up a living room. But before Steve Harvey became a legend, before the books, the shows, and the fortune, he was just a man sleeping in a broken-down car, wondering if the world would ever remember he existed. 3 years in the backseat of a rusted Ford. 3 years of hunger, shame, and silence. That's where Steve Harvey's story really begins. And what happened next is almost too unbelievable to be true. But before we get there, let me ask you this. Have you ever been laughed at for your dream? Ever been told you'd never make it? If so, then Steve Harvey's story will hit you right in the gut. And if you believe in second chances and impossible comebacks, go ahead and smash that like button right now, because this is a story you'll never forget. Steve was born in 1957 in the tiny coal town of Welch, West Virginia. His father came home every night with coal dust on his boots, lungs blackened by endless shifts underground. His mother was a teacher who stretched pennies until they broke. They had love, but not much else. Poverty pressed on them like a constant weight, and for Steve the pain went deeper. He stuttered. Every word was a war with his own tongue. In school, his classmates laughed when he tried to speak. But the wound that would haunt him forever came one day when his teacher asked the class to write down their dreams. Steve's shaky little hand wrote just 6 words, "I want to be on TV." The room froze, then erupted in laughter. And then came the sound that would echo in his memory for the rest of his life, the sound of his teacher ripping that paper in half. She scoffed. A poor, stuttering black boy from Cleveland? On television? Impossible. She even called his parents, mocking him for daring to dream too big. Steve would later say, "I still hear that paper tearing. It cut me deeper than words ever could." His mother looked down, embarrassed. But his father leaned in close and said, "Write it again. Put it on your wall. Read it every morning. Read it every night. Make it your promise." And that's exactly what Steve did. That dream became his scripture, his vow, the words that kept him alive. Years later, when he finally made it to TV, Steve never forgot. Every Christmas, he sent his old teacher a brand new television with a note attached. "The boy you said would never make it is in your living room every night." But back then, in the 70s, Steve was still just a boy chasing scraps of hope. He graduated high school with that promise burning inside him, but the world gave him nothing easy. He delivered mail, scrubbed carpets until his knuckles bled, sold insurance to strangers who slammed doors in his face. He worked as a mechanic, even stepped into a boxing ring just to get punched for a paycheck. Still, every night he whispered the same words, "I will be on TV." Then came the night that changed everything. A smoky little club in Cleveland, 1985. His friend dared him to step on stage at an open mic. Steve's hand shook, his heart was pounding. But the moment he told that first joke, something happened. The crowd erupted in laughter. For the first time in his life, Steve Harvey felt free. When the host handed him $50, Steve walked outside, stared at that crumpled bill and cried. "I was born tonight," he whispered. The very next morning, he quit his job. But the dream came at a brutal cost. For the next 3 years, Steve Harvey had no home. He lived inside a 1976 Ford. His cooler in the trunk was his refrigerator. Gas station sinks and public pool showers were his bathrooms. Nights were long, cold and hungry. He would curl up in that car, whispering his father's words over and over again. "Read your dream. Make it your promise." He admitted later, "You can do it for a week, but 3 years? It almost broke me." One night, ready to give up, he picked up the phone to call his father, to admit defeat, to go home. But before dialing, he hit play on his answering machine. 2 messages. The first was a club in Jacksonville offering him $150. The second, another gig the very next night. Suddenly, he had $300, just enough to buy a cheap flight to New York, where showtime at the Apollo was waiting. If he hadn't checked that machine, if he'd given up just one night earlier, the Steve Harvey story might have ended right there. And that's where this story explodes. Because when Steve Harvey walked onto the Apollo stage in Harlem, the boy once mocked for his stutter unleashed a voice that could not be ignored. But here's the thing. The higher he climbed, the heavier the crown became. Fame brought him glory, but it also brought chains. Missed birthdays, sleepless nights, and one mistake on live television that nearly destroyed him forever. Steve Harvey's story isn't just about laughs or awards. It's about reclaiming a voice the world tried to silence, about proving that honor isn't measured by perfection, but by the courage to rise when everyone's laughing at your fall. But just when it seemed the lights of success had settled around him, life hit harder than any punchline ever could. In 2019, NBC canceled his talk show, Steve. The show he had poured pieces of his soul into, weaving humor with life lessons, laughter with truth. And the worst part, he found out almost at the same time as the public. Headlines declared an ending, not a beginning. For many, that would have felt like erasing years of effort. But not Steve. Standing on that final taping, before the audience that had shared his joy and tears, he didn't lash out. He didn't crumble. With steady, calm words, he said, "This is just a new chapter. I'm 62, and this book of mine still has pages left." It wasn't bravado. It was a compass, guiding millions to understand that sometimes the closing of one door is the prelude to a greater one opening. By 2019, Steve Harvey had proven a truth far greater than perfection. Success isn't about flawless steps. It's about the will to keep walking, no matter how heavy the even then. The world didn't ease up. Every careless joke became a headline. Every offhand word magnified. Social media never forgets. And suddenly, memes and clips replayed his mistakes endlessly. The same man who once curled up in a car now faced the glare of millions online. But humiliation did not break him, it refined him. Every moment of ridicule became fuel. Every misstep turned into resilience. And through it all, he whispered, "Every time I thought I'd reached the end, God showed me I was just turning the page." Load. The boy silenced by a stutter. The man once broken by poverty. Both now stood taller than ever. But behind the laughter and applause was a truth many don't see. Success demanded sacrifice. And for Steve, the first and deepest price he ever paid was his family. In 1981, at just 24, he married Marcia, the quiet anchor who stayed with him when he had nothing but jokes and a fragile dream. They had 3 children, twins Carly and Brandy, and Brick Jr. For a while, their home was filled with laughter, not from audiences, but from little voices who believed in a father who could do anything. Yet behind the smiles, life was hard. Bills stacked higher than furniture. Food often scarce. Nights were spent chasing gigs that barely paid the rent. Steve's ambition, his relentless drive, pulled him away from the family he loved most. He later admitted, "I lost my family chasing the dream." By 1994, the marriage had unraveled. Distance wasn't measured in miles, it was measured in missed birthdays, empty chairs, and a father who wasn't there. Marcia carried the burden of 3 children almost alone while Steve chased laughter, sometimes hundreds of miles from home. The wound of that first family never fully healed. And yet, out of this darkest chapter, resilience grew. Every stage, every laugh, every applause came at a cost. But Steve never stopped believing he could rise. By the mid-90s, fame was knocking, but the ache of that first divorce lingered. Lonely hotel rooms, silent dinners, fleeting moments with children. And then he met Mary Shackelford, a second chance. Warmth, stability. In 1996 at 39, he married Mary. The early years felt like healing. Their son Winton was born in 1997, dash a tiny miracle, his compass, the reason he kept standing. Evenings were filled with simple joys, a crawling baby, backyard barbecues, stolen snapshots of happiness that once seemed impossible. For a man who had lived out of a car, the sound of his son's laughter was redemption itself. For a time he believed he had outrun the ghosts of poverty and loss. But ambition is relentless. The same drive that built empires slowly ate at his second marriage. Tapings, tours, Apollo, sitcoms, Steve was everywhere except home. Small silences grew, missed calls, empty chairs at holidays, arguments that cut deeper than any comedy knife. By 2005, the marriage crumbled, this time under the scrutiny of cameras and headlines. Mary's accusations splashed across tabloids, slicing at the image he had fought to build. The man once loved for laughter now faced public judgment, real and imagined, yet the deepest wound was private. Winton, his son, hurt by absence, living with his mother, alone in hotel rooms, adored by millions, yet powerless to shield the one child who mattered most. But years later, Winton chose to live with him as a team, a second chance, proof that some bonds can survive even the fiercest storms. Steve Harvey's life wasn't just a story of comedy. It was a crucible of public shame, private agony, lost family, and relentless ambition, and through every storm he endured. Because true legends aren't defined by applause or awards. They're defined by the courage to stand, again and again, when everything around them tries to pull them under. And just when you think Steve Harvey has faced his worst, life had one more test in store. This time, life didn't just threaten Steve Harvey's career. It threatened his very survival. In 2005, in the smoldering aftermath of his second divorce, Harvey stood not as a titan of television, but as a man staring into ruin. Court battles concluded, lawyers paid, but when he slid his card into the bank machine, the screen mocked him $1,700. For a man whose face filled billboards and whose voice filled arenas, that number cut deeper than poverty ever had. Humiliation, he later admitted, was unbearable. The world thought he was rich, yet he could barely breathe, and the worst was yet to come. A catastrophic accounting error revealed that for 7 years, his taxes had gone unfiled. Principal, interest, penalties, they multiplied like vultures, threatening to crush him. Once he had feared homelessness, now he feared disgrace, prison, the erasure of everything he had fought for. Alone in hotel rooms, staring at ceilings, two thoughts haunted him. What if I lose everything? What if my children see me fall? And yet, in that abyss, Harvey did what only survivors do. He fought. Before sunrise, while the city slept, he was already in a studio, his voice carrying over the airwaves on a morning radio show. That microphone became his lifeline, the battlefield where he still felt powerful while debt threatened to silence him. Every joke I told in those days was paid for in fear, he recalled, but fear fueled him. Discipline became armor, every dollar a soldier, every gig another step against despair. Exhaustion became constant, radio in the morning, meetings by day, comedy stages by night. No luxury, no pause, no rest. Out of this grind came his books, Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man in 2009, Straight Talk, No Chaser in 2010. Each page wasn't just advice, it was a barricade against creditors. Then, in 2010, Destiny arrived. Harvey became the host of Family Feud. Within 3 years, ratings soared to historic highs. What had begun as survival became resurrection. The same man who once curled up in a car now entered millions of living rooms nightly, not as a victim of debt, but as the face of laughter. Still, the climb was brutal. Every paycheck went to the IRS. Standing ovations followed nights of calculators, prayers, and fear that debt might still erase him. I thought I was finished, he admitted. But God wasn't done. Slowly, performance by performance, dollar by dollar, he clawed his way out. The whispers of, "You're finished," were drowned out by proof that resilience could turn disgrace into testimony. By the late 2000s, Harvey had rebuilt more than money. He rebuilt dignity, discipline, faith. The chapter of $1,700 and 7 years of unpaid taxes was never just about numbers. It was about shame, survival, and the terror of failing his children. And it was about what comes next. Then came Marjorie Bridges. Harvey calls her the best thing that ever happened to me. Their story felt scripted by destiny. Years earlier, he had pointed to her in a Memphis crowd and declared, "I don't know who you are, but I'm going to marry you one day." Life pulled them apart, but fate waited. In 2005, bruised by scandal, nearly broken in spirit, destiny brought them together again. 2 years later, at 50, tired, scarred, but still hopeful, he married her. And with that vow, he found not just a wife, but redemption. Marjorie did what fame, money, and television never could. She steadied him. Where he had been frantic, she brought calm. Where fractured, she made him whole. She reminded him to eat, to rest, to pray. Harvey later said, 85% of everything I have came after I married her. Not wealth, but peace. The priceless treasure of coming home to laughter, belonging, family. Today, nearly 70, Harvey is not just a comedian or host, but the architect of a global empire. Family Feud, filmed at Tyler Perry Studios in Atlanta, dominates daytime television. The spin-off, Celebrity Family Feud, continues to grow. Every morning, the Steve Harvey Morning Show reaches millions. Through Steve Harvey Global, he licenses Family Feud internationally, launching new versions in South Africa, Ghana, and Botswana, where he will personally host in 2025. His ventures extended to health and entrepreneurship. With Levito, a line of greens and supplements, Harvey fused wellness with business innovation, television, radio, publishing, production, international formats. Business each branch is both a platform and a safeguard. Never depend on one stream when you can create many, he often advises. In 2020, he secured a 17-acre Atlanta estate once belonging to Tyler Perry. Outward symbols gleam, but the true victory is invisible. Scars transformed into strategy, humiliation into foresight, survival into legacy. Steve Harvey had gone from sleeping in a car to building an empire. From $1,700 in tax nightmares to global influence. From heartbreak and loss to a home filled with love and laughter. He had not only survived, he had truly lived. At nearly 35,000 square feet, Steve Harvey's Atlanta mansion reads less like a home and more like a private resort. A state-of-the-art gym, spa, infinity pool, home theater, and even a hidden ballroom buried beneath the ground. A secret world for gatherings beyond imagination. Public records estimated at $15 million, but its true worth lies in what it represents. Permanence after decades of impermanence. This estate is only the latest chapter in a life defined by constant reinvention. During his Chicago talk show years, Harvey lived high above the skyline in a Trump Tower penthouse, city lights at his feet. Later, in ultra-exclusive Beverly Park, he rented a mansion for 6 figures a month, proof that, for Harvey, home had become not just shelter, but stage. Vacations took him far beyond land. Super yachts, charter prices in the hundreds of thousands per week, a reward earned after relentless grind. His garage tells its own story. A meticulously preserved 1941 Cadillac, a Rolls-Royce Phantom 8, a Bentley gifted to Marjorie. Each car less about transport than testimony. On his wrist, watches punctuate achievement. A Rolex day-date for timeless authority. Rainbow Daytona for exuberance. And Roger Dubuy's Knights of the Round Table for storytelling in miniature. Style, too, became an emblem of reinvention. Under stylist Ellie Caramo, Harvey redefined modern menswear. Monochrome ensembles, sharp lines, fearless colors, precision tailoring each outfit, a declaration that reinvention knows no age. For a man once measured in scarcity, his aesthetic now radiates confidence, a luxury rarer than stone or steel. Yet even in opulence, Harvey lives shadowed by discipline and fear. His greatest battle is not with applause or contracts, but with his own body. High blood pressure, sleep apnea, early symptoms of diabetes conditions that once left him staring at ceilings in dread. Determined not to let illness steal what hardship could not, he lost 30 pounds after 50, embraced relentless training, and followed a clean, austere diet, supplemented with his own line, Levito. Nights once ruled by chaos are now disciplined by sleep. Health is his covenant with family and audience alike. Still, shadows remain. Behind immaculate suits lies quiet vigilance, blood pressure cuffs, careful routines, memory of fatigue that once left him collapsing mid-conversation. Publicly, too, the past lingers. The 2015 Miss Universe error, replayed endlessly online, became a meme he had to own, apologize for, and move beyond. Even with riches and recognition, the ghost of scarcity persists. I still think about $1,700, he admits. Not money, but memory. A reminder of how fragile security can be. Applause fills arenas, yet when curtains close, the silence of responsibility roars the loudest. The weight of an empire of 7 children and grandchildren who look to him as patriarch. The promise that discipline, not fame, will keep them safe. But this chapter is not measured in ratings, contracts, or wealth. It is measured in healing. With Marjorie, the woman he calls the best thing that ever happened to me, Harvey has turned scars into strength and regrets into wisdom. Measured in healing. With Marjorie, the woman he calls the best thing that ever happened to me, Harvey has turned scars into strength and regrets into wisdom. Together, they built a blended family, stitched not by blood but by commitment. In 2015, his stepson Jason, on live television, said, "You gave me your last name. There's no one better than you, Dad," Harvey wept. For a man who once whispered, "I lost my first family chasing the dream." That moment was redemption. Proof that even broken chapters can be rewritten with love. Today, Harvey's net worth is publicly estimated in the 9-figure range. His Atlanta mansion spans 17 acres. Yet he insists the real treasure is humbler. Dinners where every child, biological and adopted, sits at the same table. Evenings where he is not Steve Harvey the icon, but simply dad. Mornings when grandchildren run through hallways, more valuable than any trophy case. His life now speaks beyond comedy. It is testimony carved from trial and grace. Resilience can outlast ridicule. Faith can carry a man through fire. And love, hard-won, undeserved, unconditional, can heal even the deepest scars. The boy who once doubted his voice now uses it not only to make the world laugh, but to remind it to hope. As Harvey often says, applause fades, trophies gather dust. But family, discipline, and gratitude, these are the legacies that endure. So, I ask you, have you ever felt reborn? Have grace or love given you a second chance? If Steve Harvey's story touches you, share your reflection. Your words may remind someone else that healing is possible, that no scar is final, and that the story is never over until we choose to write it with love.